So Megan, tell me about the project we're working on in St. Louis focused on social mobility and workforce development and equity.
Yeah. It's probably the project that gives me the most energy. I will say from the get, I didn't think this was possible. The idea that one funder could bring other funders together, not that they're competitors, but, nonetheless, distinct missions, distinct priorities, that they could come together, agree on priorities, and really set a direction for the city is remarkable. And our director there, she is also remarkable. And I was chatting with her the other day and I asked her, how have you done so much? We've been there for like 9 months, maybe a year. And she said, I'm just really ambitious for my client. And I loved that phrasing because I think it just speaks to the way we work, where their mission becomes our mission. Our ambition becomes to make them achieve everything that they can.
Such a great line.
Yeah. I know we just came from a big Chicago brand where we were talking about what a client partnership could look like. What do you think about the best approach there?
Yeah, I was really energized by the conversation with them and the size of their ambition, and came away reflecting that it's remarkable that an organization of that type succeeds to raise $50 million a year. Mm-hmm. And given the tumult in terms of public funding and their requirement of public funding, that there's a gap of another $50 million every year that they rely on public funding for, but they can't always count on it. Mm-hmm. The second thought that resonated with me is the depth and breadth of their donor pool. Mm-hmm. Tens of thousands of donors with whom they don't have, it seemed, personal relationships with the major majority of those. So our ability to dig into that data and identify and segment new donors, in addition to really engaging with their top donor prospects, I think the potential there is remarkable. I get so jazzed when we're invited to tables like that. Mm-hmm. And when we know, humbly, but we know that we're the best partner to help them. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. There are few organizations that have the potential to raise the size of gifts. You could get a $50 million gift or a $100 million gift there. Yeah. But also, if we optimize the other end of the pipeline, the small dollar gifts, it could still be a huge lift just because there's so many of them. And, there aren't many like that one.
And not just for the sake of this campaign. They have a sort of a remake of their entire campus in mind. But if you're right, and I know you are, and we succeed to uncover throngs of new donor prospects or put in place successful strategies to elevate a significant set of their current donor prospects, the residual positive impact that'll have year on year on year in terms of philanthropic revenue, pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, should we go high level?
Let's go.
Well, let's just start with overall trends. Pete, what are the trends that you are seeing and most paying attention to in the philanthropic landscape right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I'm pretty confident, Megan, that you wouldn't find much debate on this point of view, but I have a strongly held perspective that philanthropy has never been more important. It's never been more important in our neighborhoods, in our communities, for the organizations that we're so lucky to serve. Mm-hmm. And you think about the backdrop of the day we're living in today, the disparity in terms of wealth mm-hmm. is remarkable, maybe as profound as any time since the Gilded Age. And so you have a scenario where there is a concentration of wealth that is remarkably high, and a level of disparity that leaves needs that are likewise remarkable. And that invites the need for philanthropy in a way that we've probably not seen in our lifetimes. And that presents, I think, a level of responsibility, opportunity, and challenge that our firm is so well positioned to step into. And I think also about the resiliency of philanthropy, regardless of market conditions, the broader economy, inflation, political division, natural disaster. people and institutions continue to give. And I'm continually heartened by that the trajectory is up and to the right in terms of generosity. And that matches, for good or for bad, with the need for more philanthropy.
Can I tell a quick story?
Please.
It just came to mind when you said that people want to give. I remember a client we worked with a few years ago. We put a proposal in front of a donor, and the donor kind of, felt a little taken aback at the number. And the client explained, this is a pledge, but also a planned gift. And the donor went home, digested it, talked with his family, talked with his financial planner, came back. And when he was ready to document the gift, he cried. And he said, I never thought someone like me would be able to make a gift like this. Wow. Thank you. And he thanked our client for essentially asking him for a gift. And that has been a North Star for me, because when we do our job right, that's what happens.
It's an awesome story. We're continually reminded by the data that our firm seeks to gather through our Pulse report on why people give. And time and time again, the data remains consistent in terms of what motivates a donor. But a story I have to share, just a few weeks back, I was meeting with a donor prospect, a well-regarded, well-recognized donor, he and his family. And I had the opportunity to ask him the question. So this is a N of one scenario, recognizing his and his family's philanthropy, just asking, how do you make your philanthropic decisions? Why do you give? And his answer was so profound to me, in that it wasn't very novel, but profound. And he said, look, I give because our family wants to have impact. Mm-hmm. I give because we've been really fortunate. We've done exceedingly well, and I want to give back. But mostly I give because institutions have, in an organized and meaningful way, stepped forward to us and asked us to give. Mm-hmm. Pretty not profound and profound at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. This family has given millions and millions of dollars to their selected organizations, but the driving, forcing mechanism has been, they've been asked to give.
Yeah. I think that's one of the special parts about CCS, though, is that we get the chance to, in a small way, convene with some of the world's professional philanthropists and convene with those who really think about giving on a scale that most don't. And to be able to hear those perspectives and then share them with our nonprofit clients, it's just really powerful. And it's often quite simple, as you just said.
So, Meghan, nonprofits are balancing an enormous amount right now. Workforce pressures, funding uncertainty, donor expectations. From where you sit, what are the biggest headwinds that nonprofit leaders are encountering?
Yeah. So the word I use to describe the nonprofit sector right now is high stakes. You talked about dollars up, donors down, and that has raised the stakes on how nonprofits are engaging with donors. When you have a shrinking donor pool, it makes every engagement feel consequential. And there's a lot of pressure to get it right. And so, we're seeing donors with high expectations and nonprofits really wanting to meet those expectations, especially given all of the economic headwinds that we've been talking about so far. And so this is unfolding alongside, some things that you've already said, the integration of AI into the sector, new policies like HR1, the rise of donor-advised funds. And when you take all of this together, it just means that nonprofits are experiencing a lot of change, making a lot of big decisions in a really short amount of time. So high stakes moment. The other trend I would call out is just the staffing challenge. We are seeing nonprofits face employee burnout, turnover, and just really fierce competition for the best talent. And when you take that staffing picture, you overlay it with all of the complexity that we just talked about. And, the answer is clear that we just need more talent in the sector to meet this moment. So that sounds a little doom and gloom, but I entirely agree with you that this is still a really strong moment for philanthropy. You don't have to look very hard to find generosity or examples of amazing fundraising campaigns. We see it every day. But to be successful in this environment, you really do need a sharp strategy and a well-resourced team.
Let's turn to prospective clients, organizations that are looking to toe the line on an effort where they're seeking some thought partnership and some help What is top of mind for nonprofit leaders when exploring a partnership with a firm like CCS?
I'm going to use the word high stakes again. We often see that potential clients come to us at a high stakes moment. There is a large sum of funds that needs to be raised. There is a problem that needs to be solved. And so I think first and foremost, they're just looking for a client partner who can help navigate. They're looking for a partner, that can help navigate one of the biggest moments in their organizational life cycle. I also want to acknowledge that top of mind for a lot of potential clients is the investment that they're considering. And so they want to understand if that investment is going to translate into impact. So they want to know about our track record, our experience, and what they might expect in terms of ROI. And this is where I think we are really well positioned as a firm. We have 80 years of experience. And so, we can share case studies and impact stories that are really going to resonate and help build confidence with, potential client partners. The other thing that I think potential clients are really interested in is just how we work. Most of them know that they don't need help with just strategy. They also need help with implementation. And so our model of working shoulder to shoulder with client partners is really appealing. And, I just told you that story of our colleague who said that I'm really ambitious for our client. And I think the really immersive partnership and the working shoulder to shoulder becomes even more appealing to organizations when they meet our team and understand how just deeply they care about this work and our clients' missions.
I recently heard a story of you and a handful of our colleagues earning the trust of a new client partner, a pediatric hospital here in town. Mm-hmm. And I understand that in that meeting, you were asked the question, why should we work with you?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah, so this was a healthcare organization that had taken care of my family during a really hard time. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. And they took one of my kids from me. And watching the clinicians work was like watching ballet. I was terrified, but I could see how confident and how poised and how precise that team was. And so what I shared with, this potential client was that while I would never want to compare CCS to healthcare workers, that type of mindset of poise and precision and the confidence that comes from years of training and experience, that's what they should expect from our team. And we are really thrilled to be working with this organization. And it's one of those brands that just, we're so proud to be working with them.
It's awesome.
So we've been talking about the complexity of this landscape. We've been talking about what nonprofits are looking for. What are the solutions we are offering to really meet this moment?
I have the good fortune in my role to, over the years, to meet a number of really qualified CCS candidates, folks who want to come into the firm and work with us. And I share, I hope with as much modesty as I can muster, but you referenced the history of our firm. We're nearly 8 decades in practice. And because of that, and because of the breadth and depth of our firm and the expansive set of client partnerships that we've been entrusted to undertake, we have evolved as a firm. I think more and more we are looked at as a philanthropic solutions firm, whereas at one point we would have been seen as a campaign firm. And certainly we remain very focused on campaigns, and campaigns remain extraordinarily important for the organizations that we are fortunate to serve. But we're asked to do so much more. And while we've seen nearly every fundraising scenario that one can imagine, more and more clients are less interested in what we know, and they're more interested in how we think. And while we might not show up with answers to every question, we are, I think, insistent on our capability of convincing our client partners that we're able to serve as a thought partner with them, navigate real challenges, and pursue the best answer to the issues that they're facing.
We've been referencing one of our client partners in St. Louis, so I'll do it again, where we started out in fund development. This is, riffing on what you just said about we're not just a campaign firm. And we now have 3 folks working there in 3 separate scopes of work. Only one of them is true fundraising, but they saw our team, they saw our approach, And they said, we want that, but could you do it over here? And so we're in adjacent territory. We're working on a communication scope and really in a chief of staff type of role. And the fundamentals of what we do are threaded throughout all of the scopes of work, even if they aren't directly related to fundraising.
I look, Meghan, at across our organization and the remarkable privilege that we have to serve upwards of 800 nonprofit organizations a year. And it used to be the case 2 decades ago that the major majority of those engagements would be centered around a campaign, a time-bound, goal-bound undertaking. And I think as you look at our client engagements today, well under half of them would be associated with a time-bound, goal-bound initiative. There's so many other capabilities and needs and opportunities that our client partners invite us in to help them think about, navigate, and design solutions for. It's so energizing. And I think we've proven through our work and the breadth and depth of the engagements that we're a part of that we have the capability of really serving as a thought partner with our clients and navigating through real gnarly challenges and towards securing new levels of philanthropic revenue.
Yeah, one of the engagements that you and I worked on actually just sprang to mind. So not a campaign, it was a client, a school that wanted help creating a proposal and a strategy for a single donor. Now, it was a very big donor, but that was the entire engagement, was to really build argument, for a very smart philanthropist who had very specific questions and guide them in delivering that proposal. And that is one of my favorite kind of non-campaign examples of where we've had big impact.
Our work spans, Meghan, all types of clients, all types of geographies, and certainly across all sectors in the nonprofit world. What advantage do you think this depth of experience presents our firm?
Yeah. I always say about our cross-sector work is that it gives us relevance and it gives us range. So relevance, we can tell a client, we've seen this before. We've worked with a nonprofit that looks like you in some way, shape, or form, has the same mission, is a similar size, has a similar challenge or campaign size. And so they feel at home, with that relevance. But I also say we bring some range too. We've worked with hundreds of nonprofits that don't look like you. And I actually think there's a lot of power in that. Some of the best ideas, some of the best strategies and innovations come when we connect dots and cross-pollinate ideas from one sector to the other. I always say that arts and culture had to get really scrappy and creative during the pandemic. And so many great ideas came out of that sector. And, some of our clients wouldn't have any idea about them if they just stayed in their lane. And so our ability to learn from our clients, you always say this, that our clients are our best teachers, and then to really share their best practices out more widely is something that is really powerful about CCS. We've been transforming nonprofits for 80 years. What's giving you the most energy in terms of how we've grown to meet the needs of nonprofits?
The piece that always brings me the most energy in our work is our people. And I share with people who ask, why have you stayed at CCS for the entirety of your professional career? This is my career home. For good or for bad, this is the place that I've committed my decades of career work. And it's been so fulfilling. But the reason I've stayed, I always say, is the people and the people. And so first, the caliber and excellence of the people at CCS is beyond compare. I'm just in awe by our colleagues, their commitment, their intellect, their energy, their effort, their relentlessness to get the answer right on behalf of our clients. And then the people, the client partners that we serve, those institutional leaders, those board members, those philanthropists continue to inspire me. And so I've stayed at CCS for nearly 3 decades because of the people here and the people we're privileged to partner with. And recently, Meghan, I know you and I have talked about this. We gathered a number of our emerging leaders at our executive summit, and it served as such a boost for me. When you gather upwards of 125 people who are likewise committed to this work and show up on any given Tuesday, I think in large part because of our capacity to just draw a straight line from the effort we put into the day to making an impact on the organizations we serve, and therefore making the world a bit of a better place, is a tremendously energizing proposition. Meghan, you see so clearly the impact that this work has the potential to create. Where have you seen it most powerfully?
Yeah. Well, we have been a part of such amazing projects, such amazing missions. And I'll actually flip the question on you in a second, because I know you talk about the CCS impact so well. But I am often gravitating to the more personal moments. The person who is terrified of fundraising but finds his voice in this work, or the team that is really struggling and hits its stride. Those are just really meaningful to me. And I think about a client we worked with a few years ago. They had been in a campaign for like 5 years that hadn't raised any money, had completely stalled out. So we came in and we created a plan and we finished it in 6 months, I think. And that impact in and of itself was amazing. This was to build a childcare facility. And so obviously that was tremendous impact. But to see how that impacted the staff and the team there, they were trapped in this really difficult situation for years. And within 6 months, we were able to, help them find success and then channel that energy into the work, which was, equally important as fundraising, or maybe more important than fundraising. Just like that, just because we have the years of experience to know how to get in there and get it done. And so, yeah, I love seeing how our work helps people, the people that are served by our nonprofits, but also the people that work at our nonprofits and our client partners who work shoulder to shoulder with us.
Can you think of an example where our work has prepared a volunteer leader to go seek and secure a philanthropic gift, and this was an activity that they had never before attempted?
I remember working with a leader just like this. And it was funny. She trusted us, but she also needed to verbalize her concerns. So she would say something like, Meghan, you want me to go to this donor and ask for permission to present $1 million proposal? And I would say, yes, that's what I would like you to do. And she would say, that sounds crazy, but I trust you, so I'll do it. And then she would come back to us and she said, it worked. What's next? And I said, okay, now we have to deliver that proposal. And she said, you want me to go give this person $1 million proposal, look them in the eye and ask them for $1 million. I said, yes, that's what I would like you to do. And she said, that sounds crazy, but I'll trust you. And then she came back and she said, it worked. And it's really fun to see folks come alive in this work and to think that it's one thing, that it's scary, or that it's going to be arm twisting, and to find actually that it's an invitation, right? An invitation to help folks do probably what they already want to do, which is support the nonprofits that they love.
I was in a conversation recently with a client partner of ours who I respect a great deal and I've learned a lot from. And he talked about this dynamic of recognizing that in our work, in seeking and securing philanthropic revenue that is unprecedented for an organization, whether on the broad scale or in an individual circumstance. He talked about the reality that there's so much that is controllable, and there's a fair amount that is likewise uncontrollable. And he talked about it that, in pursuit of a 8-figure request that he and his team he felt really proud, managed all that they could in terms of what's controllable. The preparation, the research, the stewardship, the development of a highly customized proposal. And he talked about issuing that proposal and presiding over the request, and then recognizing what's uncontrollable, which is the donor's decision. You can influence it. You can make sure that the ask was properly put forth. But he talked about it in terms of then you surrender to the request. And you have confidence that you've done the work that you can, that you've controlled what you can. But ultimately, the decision now in terms of what that donor or that institution will do is in their hands.
Yeah. People often ask us about the power of CCS. What is the secret sauce? And I think I have an unconventional answer. You just mentioned a bunch of steps in delivering a proposal, doing the research, creating the strategy. Think about all the stakeholders that are involved in each and every one of those steps. I think the secret sauce of CCS is we know how to keep going. A lot of times you're going to hit a roadblock. one or all of those steps. This is a big deal. There's lots of people to get into agreement. Imagine how easy it is to get derailed. But we know how to stay focused, keep advancing, essentially control what we can control to get to the end.
Why do you think that characteristic is so at CCS, that we show up with and maintain that level of grit, resilience, commitment? Why is that so?
I think this is just our ethos. It's our culture. And Pete, I give you a lot of credit. I think about just a phrase you would often say is what's next and what's next and what's next. And what you were teaching us is, not to dwell on what happened or the present moment, but to always be thinking 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. And it's just an innate part of our culture. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think about a lesson that we have been offered by a client partner of ours. And I really believe we learn our best pieces of wisdom from our clients. And this particular client used the phrase action, then the right action. And I do think in our work where we're partnering with organizations, standing shoulder to shoulder, approaching an engagement in an immersive way, there is an activity dynamic that is critical to our work. We do need to be relentless. We can't be hasty. We need to be thoughtful and cautious, but we need to be relentless. And we need to ensure that the answer to the question that the client is seeking is our answer. We need to be ambitious in arriving upon the right answer on behalf of our client partners.
I knew you were going to say that example. And if there was a CCS, Bible, action and then right action would be on the first page.